Hello and welcome to the Rogers Brief. I'm Adam Rogers. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening if you're catching this on Apple or Spotify podcast. Today was day 16 of the Mass Casualty Commission proceedings, and we're starting to get some looks at different ways that the Commission is going to receive information from witnesses. I say information instead of testimony. These were not sworn witnesses put up on the stand or the witness table to give testimony, but rather it was a roundtable discussion. There were 3 individuals that were there in Halifax at the Prince George where proceedings were taking place again today, and then 2 were in remotely via video. So the theme today of the discussion was police paraphernalia and police impersonation. We've heard some discussion on this already, and some presentation on the police paraphernalia that was used by the killer during the rampage. Today wasn't really getting into much in terms of specific detail of the 13 and a half hours of the killings on April 18th and 19th, 2020. It was more of a stepping back and thinking about these issues in a more of an academic sense, I'd put it that way. Although three of the witnesses today were police officers, former police officers, and 2 were, one was a lawyer, the other one was a law professor. Actually, before I talk about that, just a few other things. So this was the last day of proceedings before we hear from the commissioners in their interim report. That's coming out May 1st, and that seems to be still on schedule despite so many delays so far in the proceedings themselves. But so we'll see what that contains. We heard a little bit from Commissioner Fitch at the end, which seemed to be designed to temper expectations on that report. Really, I would think the expectations are quite low as to what that will be. There's no recommendations that are going to be contained in that. And in fact, I don't really see how they would have a complete picture of even the first minutes and hours of the unfolding scenario, because we haven't heard from all the witnesses that are going to speak to those issues yet. So anyway, we'll see what comes out. I'll certainly read the report and come back to you with my thoughts on it when that is released. It's going to be shared with both the provincial and federal cabinet, and then it is going to be posted to the commission website, which was something Commissioner Fitch said. I wasn't sure that was going to be the case. Assumed that it would be posted at some point, but she says right away as it is submitted to the provincial and federal governments as well. So the other thing we had yesterday were these commissioned reports that were published to the commission website, commissioned by the commission. So the reports, there's 7 of them, and I'll just give you the titles. Some of them are kind of long, but I'll tell you them anyway. I'll have to read them off here. The first one is Communications Interoperability and the Alert Ready System, and this is a report being done by Lansdowne Technologies, which, as you may know or you may guess, is an Ottawa consulting firm. Prepared that report. The next one is called Mass Shootings and Masculinity. And this is a report being done by Professors Tristan Bridges and Tara Lee Tober from the University of California, Santa Barbara. So the UC Santa Barbara Department of Sociology. They're both, one's a professor, the other's a lecturer. Third one is Understanding the Links Between Gender-Based Violence and Mass Casualty Attacks, Private Violence and Misogyny versus as Public Risk. So that's a long title. This is a report done by Professors Jude McCullough and Professor Jane Marie Mahar from Monash University in Australia. I had to go on confess I did not know about Monash University, but apparently it is among the top 100 universities in the in the world, according to their own website at least. Fourth one is called Police Culture, Origins, Features, and Reform. And this is a report that was commissioned through Dr. Bethan Loftus from Bangor University, not in Maine, but in the United Kingdom, Western England. Fifth one is crime prevention and community safety in rural communities. And this is a report done by Nova Scotian Professor Karen Foster at Dalhousie University. Sixth one is called History of Gun Control in Canada. And this is a report by Dr. Blake Brown from St. Mary's University, also teaches at the law school at Dal, I believe. And the last one is called Survivors and the Aftermath of the Terrorist Attack on Utoya Island, Norway. People be familiar with that incident from years ago now. There's 4 authors to that report from the Norwegian Center of Violence and Traumatic Stress Studies. So, 7 reports. I started reading through. I've scanned them all. I'd be very curious to see how much the Commission has spent on these reports, how much we have spent on these reports, because certainly, well, not unlike the panel discussion at times, certainly today, there seemed to be some existing research warmed over and, put in a package for the Commission without a lot of new insight, nothing. If a person hadn't thought about any of these issues and you just wanted to get a start, well, maybe these would be valuable. This would be valuable reading material for you. But if you thought about policing issues, if you've thought about gender-based violence, if you've ever thought about masculinity and mass shootings and how come mass shooters all seem to be guys, well, these reports are for you. They sort of lay out those very basic tenets. So anyway, as I put in my written piece today, if you were writing an essay and you needed the first 50-60% of the essay to just cover, all right, here's the sort of obvious existing knowledge base, and then I'll get to my interesting point at the end. That's first part is what we were getting in these reports and what we got for the most part today in the panel discussion. Now there are some exceptions. I'll just go through what each individual kind of had to say, starting with so the panelists. It was moderated by Krista Smith, who's with the Mass Casualty Commission, Julia Cecchetto, who is the former chief of police at the Kentville, town of Kentville. One of her main points was, yes, if there's uncertainty as to who is a police officer, then the citizen should feel entitled to and empowered to ask that officer for their credentials, call dispatch, say, well, I'm going to drive to the police station and confirm that you're an officer before agreeing to submit to any of your questions or to, in fact, be detained by you. So that was, and she didn't really feel a great attachment to the police uniform and paraphernalia and other things that she could have taken upon retirement. So she wasn't really a collector in that sense. Next witness was Brian Carter, who's a retired RCMP officer, and he's been involved heavily with the retired RCMP officers organization. And, he talked about earning your uniform and how important that is to an officer, because you go through stages, certainly in training and throughout, where you earn certain things. And actually, it brought back a memory. I've been to Depot, and I remember when we first got there, we were watching some of the drill activities going through in the gymnasium, and one set of cadets had black shoes on, the shoes, sort of sneakers that you'd expect an RCP officer to wear, and then this other set had just any kind of color sneaker, just regular, running shoes and stuff. And so I asked the guy who was showing us around why that was, and he said, well, they haven't gone to this, they're so new, they haven't gone to the stage where they've earned those, the black shoes yet. So it is, that's a legitimate thing, that you earn certain pieces of the uniform as you go through. So that was fine. Phil Baily, who was a Nova Scotian but a retired inspector from the Edmonton Police and a memorabilia collector and very involved in that world. He was a very likable witness. Talked about how there's a community of collectors. And one of the things he did, he was sort of lamenting this online version of the trading of memorabilia and such, and the sort of eBay culture and how that works. It seemed to me that, one of the things he really liked about collecting was that you get to talk to people, you get to meet them, you get to exchange things, whether it's somebody from another police force in a different province or in another country. He talked about doing some of these exchanges internationally as well. So something, certainly he as a collector, and there's lots of collectors out there, would appreciate being part of that community of collectors. So that was all fine. As I said, that was all things that I think most people would sort of intuitively think to be the case, and so not much new in terms of insight there. Now, the other two witnesses were quite interesting. I thought one was Meaghan Daniel, who described herself as a settler lawyer based in Montreal but practices in Ontario, doing sort of human rights style issue, looking into those kind of issues as part of her practice. The other was Ian Loader, who's a professor at Oxford University. He was actually coming in from Australia. I think he teaches in Melbourne, Australia as well. So that's where he was this morning. So one of the things that was discussed was how in Canada, and it was similar in the UK with the Bobbies, the police over there, that it's become sort of a national symbol and a symbol in its own right. And this has, some dangers to it in Professor Loader's perspective, because then how can the key question that I think he's asking, and I think a real key question the Mass Casualty Commission is going to ask is, can a society that venerates police in this manner, they're in paintings, they're, the national symbol, you can buy this stuff at the airport, can a society that venerates police in this manner have a sober conversation about reforming police structures and practices? So that is a real, like I say, a key question. The other, of course, so that the premise of that question is that these are venerated symbols. Meaghan Daniel made a good point that for certain marginalized individuals, particularly Indigenous and black male youth, that symbol is a terrorizing symbol, and it's not a symbol of safety at all. And so they take a very different view of the RCMP symbol, the red surge, the whole the whole uniform really. So that was an interesting perspective as well to hear, but one I think that most people would certainly understand. One of the last questions that was asked, and I think Ms. Daniel also had a good insight here, and it's a key point for the Commission. The question was, is the risk that's associated with having this memorabilia out there greater than the benefit to, having, that some people enjoy from it? Well, her point was, okay, risk to who and benefit to who? Because that's a different question in a way. Certainly the risk is to the public and particularly to marginalized individuals, and the benefit is really to these retired police officers and who enjoy collecting and socializing with one another, which is all fine, but also the illegitimate collectors that like Gabriel Wortman. So those were all questions and issues that were raised. Like I say, nothing really particularly groundbreaking about today's roundtable discussion. So I'm not sure what people will take from that. But after the discussion was over, there were two things mentioned. First of all, from Commissioner MacDonald, former Chief Justice MacDonald, talked about a decision that the commissioners made on March 9th in terms of further witnesses who will testify. One of those is Constable Vicky Colford. Ms. Colford had requested through the police union that she be able to not answer on the stand and be cross-examination live and in person, but rather be able to answer by affidavit, written affidavit, receive questions in written form, answer them in written form. Quite unusual, particularly for somebody involved in such a situation as this, but the Commission did grant the request. They've considered all of the feedback from Participants Council, from Mass Casualty Commission Council, and they've So we don't know what all was considered. We don't know exactly what Ms. Colford's reasons were. We can presume that there was some significant mental health concerns there about testifying. So we'll see. We'll see what comes out in her sworn affidavits, answering questions. You remember Ms. Colford was stationed at the head of Portapique Beach Road in those early hours when vehicles were being evacuated and all the activities that took place there. So some questions about what took place during those hours and at that spot. So she'll have to answer those by affidavit now. Second thing was just a discussion of the interim report. It is, like I say, going to be released May 1st. It's the commission is keeping expectations low. They said there'll be no recommendations in this. I'm curious to see what of any substance will be in this report, because if we don't have a complete picture of any single portion of the scenario yet. So I guess maybe they'll say that. So it will be showed and posted on the Mass Casualty Commission website. So I'll certainly take a look at that when it comes in and come back to you with my thoughts on it. The other thing I'll be doing is taking a closer look at these commissioned reports, and I'll do a video on those as well, so you get my thoughts on those. See if there's anything of significance that you'd like to read. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on them just yet. They, like I say, they're of marginal utility from what I can tell. So we shall see. That was it for today, day 16 of the Mass Casualty Commission proceedings. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.